Hello, everyone, and welcome everyone to the second leadership journey session of our October 2022 Global Leadership Lab, emergent to the theme of developing self. We have people from all over the world on Zoom, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I will introduce myself. My name is Mary Zaki, and I'm an Atlas Corps Fellow. I'm Egyptian, I'm from Egypt, and I am currently serving with the American Red Cross as a humanitarian diplomacy fellow. I'm very excited to be today's session moderator and have the pleasure of speaking with one of our incredible guests. Before we begin, we would like to remind you that Atlas Core team will be monitoring the chat of the platforms, and so that we make sure that you ask our speaker questions, and we will get back to the audience questions by the second half of today's event. Just to warm us a little bit, here's an icebreaker question for everyone. What podcast, book, or film that has challenged you recently? Again, the question is like, what podcast or book or a film that has challenged you recently? You can type the answers in the chat, and we will get back to this. Also, while you write your answers in the chat, and I'm so excited to get to know them, we will have a brief introduction about our guest. So Bashair Ahmed, she currently lives in Brighton in the UK, and she focuses on migration, human rights, and humanitarian action, with over than 20 years of experience working with the United Nations agencies, international organizations focused on fragile, conflict-affected countries. Bashair has consulted on a wide range of migration and diaspora initiatives, including the protection of irregular migrants, the development of e-trainings and humanitarian principles of diaspora organizations, and also providing guidance on diaspora engagement in the development and the humanitarian response. Bashair holds a PhD in migration studies from the University of Sussex in the UK, where she is also currently a research associate. Her studies and academic interests include humanitarianism, diaspora issues, migration, development, and intergenerational engagement. Coffee makes Bashair happy, and we're very excited to have her with us today. So while we review the answers of your inputs here, let me start by asking Bashair the same question, like what podcast, book, or film has challenged you recently?
No, thank you, Mary, and thank you to Atlas Corps and for everyone who's joined today. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'll try to just share whatever experiences, the good ones, also bad ones, because sometimes we learn very well from mistakes. I would say, what? Recently I watched The Woman King, and I was very lucky. It was in a special preview here in the UK, and I've never seen such a lively cinema, I have to say. Everyone, the reactions to it. So the film was about, it's a historic epic. You had female warriors, so it was just like wow. So I'm just like in awe of all of them. So I'm like, okay, when am I gonna like see it again? Also properly, but that was a really enjoyable film, just because it's usually most of the epics you see is kind of focused in Europe or North America, but this was like based in what is modern day Benin, so it's like in West Africa, so it's like completely different. And Viola Davis, wow, hats off to her. So and the team there. Yeah,
the movie has been amazing. I watched it like last week as well, and it was beautiful to see it. Yeah, we have here some answers to the icebreaker. We have Catherine says that the 5 a.m. Club from Robin Sharma, and Maz says that the book The Culture Map by Erin Meyer influenced her and affected her perspectives. So Bashair, if we can start with you, like with your accomplishments, from having like a PhD that is already accomplished to being a CEO to Shabaka, how would you say your background contributed to your career path in this field, and was the path always been clear and obvious?
Oh, I can answer you that like straight away. It's like it's never obvious. You never know what's going to happen. So it's a case of being able to just kind of sometimes take some risks. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. So I did actually my PhD a bit later after having worked, for more than a decade or so, before embarking on that, because I wanted to ensure we bring in
Mhm.
into the research. It was something about a topic close to my heart. So it's about the experiences of 1.5 and second generation diasporas, those of migrant backgrounds from the Horn of Africa. And I did a comparative of those based in Washington, D.C. and London in the UK. And it was just to kind of ensure that we understand those experiences, these, oral histories, lived experiences, issues of trauma and such. So I founded Shabaka while I was doing my PhD, and I've been lucky because over the years, having great friends, allies, colleagues who've been supporting for us to get to this point where we are with Shabaka at the moment, where we're still a small organization, but we really are kind of punching above our weight in terms of engagements with different actors and try to get the issues of diaspora migrants, ensuring they are at the table rather than talked about as just the terms beneficiaries and all of that. So yeah, so I think that's kind of like a brief kind of background to some of the motivations. I knew kind of wanted to work in this sector, but I didn't know exactly on what. I studied in human rights, went into development, did a bit of humanitarian, worked in different countries. So
Mhm.
I've been very lucky to have these opportunities. Um, and all of that kind of built into kind of like all the skill sets, because when people say, oh, chief executive officer, that
Mhm.
means you're doing, it's like throw in the kitchen sink, you do everything. So I was once, doing the IT, I'm the HR officer. So you have to be prepared to do everything like everyone else in terms of with colleagues and all of that.
Fascinating, and we will get to the piece of like engagement and building partnerships and networks with others in order like to develop in our careers. I just would like to hear from you, and I believe everyone else will be very motivated to listen about your motivations to embark on starting an organization. It's something different, and transforming a personal passion into tangible reach. Like starting your own organization is never an easy thing. So what motivated you to start that?
So to me, having worked kind of like different organization and all of that, I could see just in terms of my own lived experience. So never dismiss your own lived experiences of things you see is not working right. Because sometimes you can have it on paper. It's like, oh, this is covered, this is covered. But if
Mhm.
you feel the space is not there for you, I have a friend of mine. She always says, if there's a space you don't find, you just have to create it.
Wow. Mhm.
So, so it was kind of like, okay, where's the space for someone of migrant diaspora who had these experiences working in this sector, and why aren't they at the table? Why are they not recognized? For example, I'll give you just some figures. So,
Mhm.
migrants, in terms of remittances figures, it's much higher than official development assistant or financial director investments. It's around $700 billion a year, and
Mhm.
this is what is recognized on paper. So you could imagine how much diasporas and migrants are already doing. Most people just assume about their migration trajectory to particular settlement countries,
Mhm.
but that transnational linkages with origin countries or other locations, what they do in terms of protection, humanitarian system development, and engagement, and it's not recognized. It's
Mhm.
slowly being done because we're not the only organization kind of trying to raise awareness about this by building evidence base and such. So it came from having that gap in knowledge. And it's like, okay, so if no one else is going to do it, step in, step up and just do it. And it just started small. It's not, I think most people just assume they need to have a multi-million-pound budget or dollar budget to get on with it. No, this is how ideas start. Start small, be focused, work on a niche. I know you cannot solve all the world's problems in one go. So we started to kind of just focus on specific on diasporas and humanitarianism,
Mhm.
and even this on a specific context. And then this is how you build up reputation, build your portfolio, ensure you have evidence base. So research is this is something missing. Is like you can do a lot of events,
Yeah.
but if you don't have the evidence around it, it's yeah, it's the issue of credibility as well, and you need to make sure that the kind of activities you do is based on this kind of evidence. So
That's great. Yeah. So I believe those are the practical steps that you've taken
yeah.
in order to like reach where you are now. Just a quick question about your journey. Did your journey look like what you thought it would be?
So I was born in the Gulf. I did school for a bit in Sudan. I grew up in the UK, here in Brighton. So I did have kind of like different linkages to different places. Also, kind of like sometimes kind of that insider outsider feeling. So it's kind of like, what do you do with that? So in terms of kind of like how that motivated me, I always kind of looked outside,
Yeah.
wanted to kind of see what's happening in the world. So that was always an interest for me, kind of like international relation development. And that's what I did for my undergraduate. University can prepare you for a lot, but the practice, like the work experiences, can be very different from what you see on textbooks and stuff and such. So this is why I think Atlas got that practical, you know, lived experiences, live,
Yeah.
really matters. And ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And don't shy. If you don't ask, you don't get. So ask questions
Right.
and try things out. I know most people I know, people think of it as you have to go through that path of like A, B, C, and D. Life is never that way. So just be, everyone should be kind to themselves. Don't expect you're going to go in a particular trajectory.
100%. And speaking of that, like which values have guided your organization?
I think the ethos of partnerships, collaboration, so be collaborative. We have a great team, so it's like everyone, come together. So that kind of ethos, I know most people tend to think of like, you just work hard, have fun as well. That's secret as well. Throwing a bit of fun. We're humans. We need to also do that. And just be kind of like, I think what's kind of exciting is like, as a team, we're all kind of committed. We all come from different backgrounds. So it's diverse skill sets. So appreciating that somebody might be good at research, somebody else might be good at communication, so just, it's like a jigsaw. So how do you build it? You cannot just be everything, and you can't do everything well. So just to do that. And communicate as much as you can what you need, what you want, and just be able to do that.
That's great. We are aware that Shabaka's mission is facilitating diaspora role in strengthening humanitarian preparedness, response, and recovery. And you state that diaspora are often overlooked by the important actors in the existing humanitarian architecture.
Yes.
While Shabaka seeks to change this, why do you think it's important to engage the global diaspora community as active agents for change?
I think it's for several reasons. So I'll just articulate 3 reasons. The first one is because diaspora are already doing humanitarian and development work, humanitarian action, the supporting in origin countries, supporting communities in settlement countries, as we've seen with COVID. However, if you have international organizations for sending in a lot of money or like people on the ground, you already have so they're working in parallel, but not communicating with each other. So that's waste of resources. Secondly, in terms of decision making, you have a lot of knowledge and experiences about reaching out particular areas. An example of how the Syrian diaspora have been instrumental of ensuring that humanitarian aid reaches areas that international organizations are not able to reach. So they are key actors in this particular space. So why aren't we engaging much more with these groups? And thirdly, it's also about agency. Why should it be just an international from global north trying to help the global south? So we're quite open about the whole decolonizing debates, about that knowledge from the global south to be recognized as well. So and that humanitarian development assistance should actually be more localized, coming from the communities. So diaspora supporting the communities. So don't fly just a plane with loads of people and supplies and just drop it in. Work with those who actually know the context and the situation and all of that. So that's what we advocate for as well.
That's amazing. And it hits with the localization agenda that is like booming within the humanitarian sector at the moment. Yeah. I also would like to to let everyone know that your own research, you've done a research on reasons for giving back, motivations for engaging in transnational political activism by adult children of migrants
Yes.
from the Horn of Africa.
Yes.
Explores the drivers for engaging in activism for the adult children of migrants from the Horn of Africa, based in London and Washington, D.C. Speaking of that, how has activism played a role in your life, and why is it important for diaspora to be engaged beyond the humanitarianism, and how do these topics intersect with one another?
So I think activism, people tend to always think it's about being political, but it's not necessarily. It's about wanting to change. It's about social change. It's thinking, positive. For example, ensuring equity and equality based on gender or age or migrant background. I think this is quite important. And the other layer to it is, so it's not just about just kind of do that. It's about positive. It can be also some people who engage in activism for negative change. So we have to see both sides of the coin. But generally, yeah. So we recognize it's very important to be positive, to recognize like that kind of positive engagement, whether it's to change for positive for communities, at the local level, or for bigger things. People work on issues of climate change and all of that. But all of us have this, it comes from somewhere personal, much more deeper. Most people just think, where do your values come from?
Yeah.
So the ethos of it is from micro, the family unit or the community unit, to the macro level. So it's recognizing that in terms of activism. It was quite fascinating how some of those I spoke to did not think they were engaged in any sort of activism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because to them it was like, I'm not involved politically.
Wow.
And it's like, it's not about
Yeah.
joining a political party. I'm not a member of any political party, whether it's in the UK or Sudan or anywhere else. However, I have certain ethos and values that I follow, which is about ensuring equality, health services are doing well, and such. Why in some parts of the global north, why do you have to have like food banks and such? So there is these kind of topics to kind of look into. So activism is much more broader than what we think.
That's very interesting for us to hear and know.
Mhm.
It starts with the community, on the community level, and on the individual level. How
Yeah.
would you describe your personal brand? Talking about your own personal brand and having ties to more than one region, and how is your personal brand tied to Shabaka's brand?
So yeah, I founded Shabaka, but so many more people are now part of that story.
Uh-huh.
So Shabaka is an institution, and everyone has their say. So it's not just me. But in terms of what I believe in and values, it's about for me. It came from different places and different spaces. I'm very much a transnational citizen. Yes, I might have the passport from this place or this other place. I have that sense of belonging. For example, at one point I was living in Ethiopia, and to me that felt like home. I had the opportunity to work in Pakistan, and there was like nuggets. So yeah, I feel like I connect with a lot of people just who had that kind of movements.
Mm-hmm.
But also in values, I really kind of strongly believe that social justice is something very important to me personally, equality, and also one thing is kind of the gender, how I'm viewed in certain perspective. I'm like Muslim background, African heritage, Arabic speaker, grew up so in every way it's like I'm disadvantaged but advantaged. So it's just recognizing this kind of spaces as like, I'll have in Sudan people love on my accents, and it's like, oh, you can't speak Arabic properly. Or here in the UK it's like, oh, where are you really from? So it's just to kind of feel comfortable in your own skin and just be proud of whoever you choose to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because identity, don't be put in a box. If you're not comfortable with it, don't be. And just be prepared to kind of just say, not everyone fits into the status quo.
That's very inspiring. Yes. How one perceives their own identity and works for their best when it comes to the career. Also, that our fellows are young professionals looking to enhance their
Yeah.
skills networks and leadership potential, many return back home looking for new opportunities and potentially even a career shift.
Yeah,
As networking is part of our career enhancement and
yeah,
advancement,
yeah,
how has been like being a proactive networker
yeah.
been essential to your own personal journey? And if you can give us
Yeah.
like one or a couple of examples on how important accomplishments in your life have been achieved through the support of your network, or
Mhm.
ways that supported others in your network.
Yeah, so I think that's what's important. It's not just to kind of think, oh, I've accumulated this, I've achieved this, and close the door behind you. Always ensure there is, it's a circular thing. We're all going to be at different points in our lives where we could be doing well or not so well. So be supportive to those around you in your networks. Network building is all about, trust, ethos, and values. So make sure also have a professional brand. So I understand where you're kind of coming from that. Yes, if you have like, your email accounts, make sure it's like professionally done. Have a LinkedIn profile. Um, be prepared to attend events and meetings. We're all learning. I'm learning every day just being here as well, just to kind of, hear events and see about it. Write as much as you can, blog, and be involved in podcasts. You can just, even a group of you can just, develop something together and see where it goes. In terms of networking, also, don't, if you're in an event or something, make sure you do the reading. Don't go into it blindly. Introduce yourself to people. What was it? Some people say you need to have your 30-second pitch. Haven't quite got that yet, but anyway, it's a learning in progress. Um, Another thing that,
If you can provide us with examples of accomplishments of which networking has been a part of it.
so in terms of accomplishments, Shabaka wouldn't have come into existence if it
Yes.
wasn't into kind of like network. So Shabaka, as you know, in Arabic, it means network, but it's also a name of a Nubian pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so our ethos is you can't do it alone, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
do it with others as well. Don't hesitate to reaching out to people if you have someone that has interesting work or such. I kind of like uh took the risk. They might not respond, but I, drop them an email or something like that and just say I'm interested to learn about your work, or to do that. That's one thing. And in terms of how Shabaka grew because of our networks.
Wow.
We reached out to people, people gave us a chance. It's also about people just kind of like taking a risk on you. So we try to ensure that we deliver our best. Um, don't try to do too many things, because sometimes you can get distracted. I know the world can be sometimes a very exciting place.
Yeah.
Um, so there is that. So if another specific example, I would say major events. If there's a major event happening in a city near you or such, go to those.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you're in New York, Washington, D.C., Cairo, wherever it may be, do attend them. I know you have COP27, for example. This is great. So just make sure you attend even the side events just to kind of understand what the conversations are around and all of that.
That's
And
very
write about it. And write about it.
yes. If also like we touch on ways of which you supported others in your network, if you can give us like a couple of examples on that.
Um, yeah, so it is different. It varies. So, for example, for for some people, give them a bit more visibility, involve them as to do some research with us, or to attend events. So recommend them, because we always get asked who should sit on this panel or that panel, so we
Mm-hmm.
can recommend individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also, um, just career advice. Sometimes just be prepared to give a part of your time
Mm-hmm.
to give advice to other young people and such. So if people, drop a message like, I need advice, what should I do about a, job application? They need a practice run with interviews. We've done that. So it's all these kind of like small details that can sometimes help an individual to go to that next step in their careers. So we've done that individually, and also we have like ensure that, for example, ensure that we have paid internship and apprenticeship programs, because it's a war when you kind of like have to volunteer for like or do internship for years without any funds and all of that. It's difficult. It's not feasible for everyone. So we have to ensure that certain people from certain demographics are included.
That's a quite insightful. Thank you so much for that. Bashair, moving to a next like topic or just area that we need your insights on. We always say that talent is universal, but opportunities are not. This is core to why we do what we do as an organization, bringing the gap to access, talking about Atlas Core. And however, the reality of someone in the position can be tricky with like access comes with potential burden and responsibility. And often people end up gatekeeping knowledge or opportunities for themselves. Like touching on that, how would you advise us that we avoid being gatekeepers to opportunity while still progressing in our careers in such a very competitive world?
You might want to be a gatekeeper, but all it's going to happen is people can see it from the top. You will build a reputation that you're blocking. It will come through. So that's why it's always good. Don't burn bridges. And that's how you might do it if you are kind of like become a bit of a gatekeeper. Give opportunities. If there's something you can't do, recommend a colleague. So utilize that network, not just to get, but to give, because it will come back. It might be like sometimes we've done stuff at pro bono or something. Years later, it comes back as a well-funded project. So it comes back. So I genuinely believe that give opportunities. Not just take. So it's a give and take in this kind of space and ecosystem. You might think it's a massive world, but it's actually quite small. And
yes,
as I've been around for like 20 something years in this sector, and everyone knows everyone. So nothing is kind of completely hidden in a way. So there is some level of transparency available on that. And people will take a chance, because we're always, I think it's important to also look generationally. So for us, we're kind of looking at that, who's going to be the next generation of researchers and all of that. So it's like, how can we pass that knowledge and those experiences, or attend events with us, or this kind of things. So as you kind of progress in your careers, just make sure that you bring others. Be a mentor if you have the time. Even if not, just give advice from time to time if you can do it ad hoc. I think that's really important. Another thing is just write about your experience. Share it as much as possible. I know some jobs did not work very well for me, but one thing was not to burn bridges. Like, you can walk away. Quitting a job or something like that, it's not the end of the world. Other doors are open. So just kind of like keep at it in terms of that kind of ethos, and just treat people how you'd like to be treated. I think this is something people just think you need to be really tough, and it's like, you can be in a movie, it works, but not in real life, because end of the day, just it's important to have that humility and understanding of that.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I would like also to ask you, like, since you are a social impact leader, what qualities do you think are lacking amongst some leaders of today, and what leaders have inspired you along your journey?
Well, thank you for calling me that, but I don't feel like that. No, I think sometimes people get burnt out and get overstretched. I think we all try to overdo. I think it's this kind of like, you have to do something by a particular age, that tick box exercise. Please don't follow that as much as possible. I know you have all this pressure from society, but also in the work world, it's like you must have done A, B, C, and D. Everyone has a different journey, so you don't have to follow every single step of that. So I think just feel comfortable to do that. The second thing, in terms of I'll talk about people I've seen who are great leaders. I had the opportunity to work with somebody called Christina Musese. She is United Nations humanitarian coordinator in Tanzania.
Wow.
So even though she was like in a senior level, but she was very much of, she can give you feedback, but not in a negative way. Like, so take constructive criticism well. Don't take it badly. Somebody's trying to help you when they're telling you some feedback. The other element of it is just to kind of, the humanity. I know some people, organizations, some entities really believe in hierarchy. I think that's one thing we have an issue with. Yes, hierarchy is important in terms of ensuring responsibilities, but you will lose touch if you just stick to it. So just make sure you have, if you're quite senior, make sure you have junior staff members join, even if it's not part of their role, just to listen. It's just that soft skills is not transferred on paper.
100%.
It's by observation.
Yes.
So just ensure that you bring in, young people, interns, into those kind of spaces, to events you organize. So don't do all this kind of like just, only this level can be in this room.
Yes.
So this is the kind of interesting things I've seen from different. I know this is kind of like more kind of broadly, but there's just so many things, and I think it depends on individuals. So
Right.
as long, to kind of ensure that, and transparency is really important.
Very.
So if someone gives you feedback, critical feedback, don't take it badly. It's actually a positive, because someone wants you to do better.
Yes. Like they might actually open your eye to something that you're not seeing yourself. So always
Exactly.
assume positive intent.
Exactly. Don't be defensive about it. It's just absorb it and just like, okay, and just learn from it. And we'll all of us make mistakes, so please don't kind of like beat yourself about it. I think this is the other thing, is somebody kind of being told off or something like, you've made a mistake. Just be patient with it as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And also, while we keep asking you questions, I would like to remind everyone that you can post the questions in the chat box so that we can ask Bashair and get answers from her while she's live with us. I would like to flag that there is a question from Idrisa. Which global organization leader did you meet, and how did you present her your mission?
Which global? I've been very pleased because I got.
How did she present her mission to you? I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
A global leader, how they presented their mission to me.
Yes, that's the question.
Oh, I'm trying to think about it. I might have to come back because I can't think of it right now. But I think people, I think everyone has a different style. So I don't think it's kind of content. So have worked in with the United Nations. So different people's kind of like, this is what we're talking about. So sometimes it's more formal, sometimes a bit informal. So it depends on the setup. So I don't think there's a standardized way. I'm trying to think of an example. Ban Ki-moon was like in a meeting, so it was very formal, but he presented the kind of the work that he does and all of that. So because there's certain protocols in certain organizations. So that's why I was saying it's going to be a straightforward answer. If it's going to be a dinner, formal dinner, it will be a bit more different. What was it? I was sitting in a meeting with at a dinner event with a barrister, and it was just kind of like she was telling me about her day. It was just like, so it was like a long conversation. So it wasn't her 30 seconds of like, I do A, B, C, and D, but it was more about her. And then it's like, this is the work I do. So it's very individual choices and context related.
That's very interesting. If you can just let us know, like, what is the best and what is the worst advice that you've ever been given?
Best advice was, I think it just to kind of like trust myself, like have like a bit more self-belief. That was the best advice. It's kind of like, because sometimes you go through bits when you feel get a bit of a wobble in terms of confidence or all of that. All of us go through that. So it's just kind of like, no, you're fine. Just go with it and just trust your gut feeling. Gut feeling is just like the build-up of various experiences. So go with your gut. I think is important. Worst advice was people stopping like taking risks, like no, stay to where you are at a certain level, like in a job, and it's like no, don't take that risk with other job, and all of that. This is and I'm kind of like thinking that was bad advice. So,
Yes. That's so good that that one can differentiate between the good and the bad when it
yeah,
comes to advice given to them. And
yeah.
actually, there is like a question from Maz that is a bit related to what we're talking about at the moment. She said that, like, what advice would you have to deal with a partner or a team member who's for one reason or another does not offer you constructive or helpful feedback, but like puts blame criticism on your work that is demotivating and discouraging? And how do you pick yourself up to continue believing in yourself while you're faced with that?
This is why it's important to be surrounded and be in contact with the right networks,
Mm-hmm.
because this is who is going to keep you uh, focused when
Yes.
you're getting this kind of, and also be prepared to walk away if it's a negative situation. Be prepared to not, as an organization, all of that, if it's not going to be a positive partner or who can have the same ethos as, walk away. If it's that person is kind of like destructive, and you've seen people being burnt out really kind of lose their confidence in
Yeah.
particular jobs because they have a boss who's really difficult and all of that. My suggestion is speak to someone for advice and do that. Don't do it. You can't do everything alone. And secondly, if you can walk away from that kind of negative space, don't be in it. You don't need to. And there's other jobs and other things. So you might be in the best job in the world on paper, but it might not be the reality. But
Wow. Mhm.
yeah.
Yes. Also, like we have a question from Amina. She said that we, as younger professionals or leaders, how do we ensure that we are heard or but by more experienced and advanced people in the field? And how do we make sure that we're taken seriously? And if you have ever been facing any neglect of for your ideas or projects that you've might presented in the past, how did you deal with that?
Good question.
Yes.
Firstly, be consistent. Don't kind of deviate and it's like, oh, let me include all these extra bells and stuff. Like, be very clear what you want to recommend. Secondly, again, this is where the power of network. You're all kind of like a great network. Maybe do together a paper and or blog or something, whatever the idea is, and just build up people and have you buy in. People will listen eventually to it. Um, and it, yeah, don't be discouraged. If you think it's a great idea, speak to others, get feedback, and do that. So reach out to your network. So, and I know kind of like sometimes when you're a young person, it's like happened to me in the past where I've been in spaces and people's like not taking me seriously, and
Mhm.
and it takes time, especially if you're a woman of color in particular spaces. It's like you're
Yes.
forgotten about. So you will find your way around it and build it. So it's just kind of like don't take it personally. Just build and just kind of come back and go to your allies and to get other opportunities. So as I said, there's not one path. There's different paths to everything.
That's very, very inspiring. We also have like, how would you consider a successful career? Or in a different question, like what success looks like for you? How success and what does it look like for you to name it a success?
I think for everyone, I think this is again, success is not just on somebody's perception of what success is. It's for you, what makes you feel good. Some people are satisfied by a simpler life. They're like, okay, have this, full-time job in a shop, can provide for my family. So it's about a sense of satisfaction for yourself. Do you see the glass half full or half empty? So don't think of success as somebody else's perception, but what is it for you? So
That's,
as long as you're comfortable with that.
yes.
Um, so yeah, so this is something I would not say to you, oh, success looks like you have like this and this and this. No, don't have that long list.
Yeah.
This is
But personally, like how what success looks like for you?
um success for me, it's to be I guess to be content and to be happy is like, am I contributing to this, or am I shifting? Sometimes the success might be, I might have cooked a nice meal,
Yes,
have a nice dish. So
essential.
sometimes like satisfied, I'm like, yes, I've done that, or did a trip. So don't think of success as a big thing. It's not about receiving an Oscar. Let's put it that way. Think of it as small bites of life of what makes you happy and content. So, so this is how I try to do it, because otherwise you're just going to burn. You'll never be happy, never be content, or you're going to be chasing your tail forever.
That's beautiful. Lastly, we have another question from Anastasia, and she said, like, how to scale your project to the international level. If you have any tips to provide us, like, how did you take it from like the context and then move it to the global level or the international one? Yeah.
Okay. So it depends on the projects, but I think one thing to do is do the pilot or do something small, do it well. Because the whole idea of methodologies or how you develop a project on a bigger scale, it needs to be tested. Test all the issues, all the topics before you scale it up. If you're going to be doing it internationally, comparative frameworks sometimes work. So this is why, for example, my PhD research used a comparative framework of those based in Washington, DC and London, because different contexts, different experiences. If you want to scale internationally, don't just fly in and assume you can replicate everything. Make sure you speak to people who have that lived experiences in the country or the context. Because there's some nuances, like we found out recently, there was, we're working on a proposal in a project for Lithuania and such, and we didn't realize like focus group discussions, the way you do it is very different to how you would do it in the UK or in Egypt or something. So local knowledge is queen, I would say. So yeah, it's important.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bashair. It has been a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you so much for those insights for all of us. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for another leadership journey session of the Atlas Core Global Leadership Lab. Make sure that you follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube as well for more engaging content like this. And visit our website, apply.atlascore.org, to learn more about the ongoing recruitment opportunities for Atlas program teams. I was Mary. My name is Mary, and our guest today was Bashair Ahmed, the founder and the CEO of Shabaka. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. And thank you, Bashair, again.
Oh, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.